All right, get ready because today we're going to take a deep dive into humanoid robots. And I can tell you're ready to go way beyond what we usually see in movies.
Definitely.
So we're going to take apart how these things actually work, what they're doing in the real world right now, and the big questions they bring up about our future.
Yeah,
Did you know that there are robots out there learning by watching us?
it's amazing.
And get this, there's a whole field of study dedicated to teaching robots how to not fall down,
Right.
which is way harder than it sounds.
It really is. It's incredible how much engineering and programming goes into something we take for granted, like walking.
Okay, so before we get to walking, let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What makes a robot humanoid? Is it just about looking like a person?
It's more about being able to function in our world than just looking like us, like all the things we do every day, going upstairs, opening doors, using tools. Humanoid robots are made to navigate and work in spaces designed for humans.
So less C-3PO and more about what they can do.
Exactly. While C-3PO is an icon, real humanoid robots are all about combining three things: their anatomy, or their physical body, their function, the stuff they can do, and interaction, how they use AI to understand and react to us.
That makes sense, but it's not like the idea of artificial beings is brand new, is it? I mean, humans have been fascinated by creating artificial life for centuries.
Absolutely. It's a concept that's been with us for a long time. Like, think about the golem from Jewish folklore. This being made from clay and given life to protect its creator. The idea of making artificial life has been around forever.
So from clay to these computer machines, how did we go from myths to actual robots?
It's a long road of huge technological jumps. Early mechanics gave us the foundation. Electronics brought in more complexity, and then computers came along. That was a game changer.
I remember those clunky robots from the movies in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Things have changed a lot since then. What are some of the biggest advancements that make today's robots so different?
One of the most amazing things is movement. Making a machine that can move like a person, especially on two legs, that is so hard to do. Our joints let us move in all these different ways. It's called degrees of freedom. It's like having a bunch of hinges and swivels working together. And then we're always adjusting our balance without even thinking about it.
So it's not just about telling the robot to do specific moves. It's about copying how smoothly and naturally humans move.
Exactly. And, robots like the Tesla Optimus Gen 2 and the Boston Dynamics Atlas, those are great examples of how far we've come. Even robots you can buy now, like the Unitree H1 and G1, they're starting to show off this technology. A really important idea here is the zero moment point. Imagine a humanoid robot walking across a messy room. To stay upright, it has to constantly adjust its balance. And that's where the zero moment point comes in. It's basically the spot where the robot's center of gravity has to be so it doesn't fall over.
Wait, robots have a center of gravity? That's wild. It's easy to forget they're machines trying to copy something that's incredibly complex.
It really is. And it goes beyond just moving around. How robots understand the world is another area where we've made huge progress.
Right. Because they don't see things the way we do they?
They have their own way of sensing the world. Instead of eyes, they use LiDAR. It's like radar, but with lasers. Imagine a robot scanning a room. It sends out these laser beams that bounce back, and that creates a 3D map of what's around it. They also use depth cameras. These cameras measure how far away things are using infrared light. And now, this is where it gets really cool, they can even feel things now using sensors.
Wait a second, robots can feel. Tell me more about that. What does that even mean for a robot?
Well, think about how we use touch to pick things up, to tell us something is heavy or light, or what texture it has. Robots are getting similar abilities by using pressure sensors and texture sensors. This helps them to grasp objects with just the right amount of force, so they don't crush delicate things or drop heavy stuff.
So they're not just pre-programmed to move, they're actually getting information from the world around them and changing how they act based on what they feel. That's pretty amazing. It's almost like a sense of awareness.
You could say that. And this feedback from their senses is super important for how they learn. Which brings us to AI. We're starting to see robots that learn from their mistakes. Much like we teach a dog new tricks with rewards, it's called reinforcement learning, and it's changing everything.
Okay, that makes sense. But I also read about robots learning just by watching what we do. Is that true?
Yes, it's called imitation learning, and it's a field that's growing really fast. You have platforms like NVIDIA Isaac GR00T, which trains robots in incredibly lifelike simulations that are based on human actions. And then there are projects like Google DeepMind's RT2, which are pushing the limits of how robots process information and how they learn from watching us do things. Imagine a robot watching a chef cook a meal and then doing those same steps. It's incredible.
Wow, so they're not just following instructions, they're actually learning and adapting based on what they see. Now, that does feel a little sci-fi. What does it mean that robots can learn from human behavior? Does it change how we think about intelligence?
That's a deep question. Robots being able to learn and adapt from us, it really blurs the lines of what we traditionally consider intelligence. And it opens up amazing possibilities for what they can do in the real world.
Speaking of the real world, let's move past the tech itself and talk about what these humanoid robots are actually up to out there. I hear they're not just a futuristic fantasy anymore.
That's right. We're seeing them used in all kinds of industries, from making things to healthcare and even education.
Okay, let's break those down one by one. Let's start with industry. What kind of jobs are we talking about?
Take Figure 02, for example. It's a robot designed for factories. Humanoid robots are great for tasks that need dexterity, like putting together cars. Imagine a robot next to human workers, handling all these intricate parts with precision.
So they're not replacing the whole assembly line, but they're working with humans on very specific tasks.
Exactly. It's about using their strengths in areas where they're really good, leading to more efficient and flexible production processes.
That's fascinating. Okay, so what about healthcare? How are they making a difference there?
There are robots like Pepper, and they're being used in places like nursing homes to help elderly patients. They can remind you how to take their meds, lend a hand with simple tasks, and even just provide company.
That's amazing. Do you have any specific examples of how, robots are really changing people's lives? Like, are they actually making a difference, or is it mostly a novelty?
There was a study done where Pepper was used in a nursing home, and the people who interacted with it showed much less loneliness and isolation. They would chat with Pepper, play games with it, and even tell it stories. It's a great example of how robots can meet those social and emotional needs, not just the practical stuff.
Oh, that is heartwarming. It seems like they're not just machines, but in a way, potential companions. It really changes that image we have of robots as cold and unfeeling.
It does, and that ability to connect with people on a social and emotional level, that's a big part of what makes humanoid robots different from other kinds of automation. Because of their human-like form and because they can interact socially, they're especially good for jobs where a human touch is important.
What about in education? Are robots making their way into classrooms? What are they doing there?
Oh, absolutely. They're being used as interactive learning tools, helping students learn about robotics itself, as well as other STEM subjects. Remember those AI learning methods we talked about, like reinforcement learning? Well, those same principles are being used to create robots that can actually adapt to different learning styles and give personalized instruction. Imagine a robot tutor that can change its teaching methods to fit a student's needs.
Wow, robots teaching students about robots. That's pretty meta. It seems like they're not just taking over jobs from humans, but they're also helping us learn and adapt to this new world where we coexist with robots.
You got it. It's a fascinating example of how this technology isn't just about replacement. It's also about expanding our abilities and creating new chances to learn and grow.
It's clear these robots are already making their mark, but as they become more and more a part of our lives, it also brings up some big questions about the future. Like, what happens when they get even smarter and more integrated into what we do every day?
Definitely. As they get more advanced, we need to start thinking about some serious ethical and social questions. We need to have these conversations now while the technology is still developing.
Okay, well, let's dive into those big questions next time. This is getting really interesting. All right, so we've established that humanoid robots are not some far-off thing anymore. They're here, they're working, they're even making friends at nursing homes. But as they become even more a part of everything we do, it's pretty clear that we have to think about what that means. What are some of the biggest concerns that you think of when you imagine that future, a future with robots?
One of the biggest ones, and it's a valid concern, is the impact on jobs. People worry that robots will take over so many tasks that we'll end up with a lot of unemployment.
Yeah, it's a real concern. I mean, we've seen how automation has changed industries in the past. Think about telephone operators or typists. Those jobs are pretty much gone now. Are we headed in the same direction with these humanoid robots? Are they really coming for our jobs?
It's not quite as simple as robots just taking jobs. It's more of a shift in the types of jobs that will be available. Sure, some jobs will become automated as robots get more capable, but that automation also opens up new opportunities for other kinds of jobs.
Okay, can you give me an example of what that might look like? It's easy to say new jobs will emerge, but what kind of jobs are we talking about?
Think about the early days of the internet. Back then, no one could have predicted all the jobs that would be created in web development, digital marketing, e-commerce. Those fields didn't even exist. In the same way, as robots start doing more of the routine tasks, we'll probably see a huge demand for people who can design, build, maintain, and repair those robots. And we'll need people who can train robots, find new ways to use them, and make sure they're operating safely and ethically.
So it's not so much robots versus humans, but more like humans and robots working together, almost like partners.
Exactly. It's about recognizing what each of us is good at, both humans and robots, and then finding ways to use those strengths together. Robots are great at repetitive tasks, precise work, and handling data. This frees up humans to focus on things like creative problem solving, critical thinking, and tasks that need empathy and emotional intelligence.
That makes sense. So maybe instead of worry about losing jobs, we should be thinking about how to adapt and get ready for these new types of jobs. How can we make sure people have these skills they'll need to succeed in this new world?
Education and training are going to be super important. We need to teach people the skills that robots can't do: creativity, solving complex problems, thinking critically, and social intelligence. Those skills will be in high demand as the way we work changes.
Okay, so jobs are one big concern, but what about other ethical stuff? Like, what if a robot messes up? Who's responsible when things go wrong?
That's a big one, and it's only going to get more important as robots become more independent. Say a robot malfunctions and hurts someone. Is it the programmer's fault, the company that made it, the person who owns the robot? Or maybe in the future, could the robot itself be held responsible? These are really complicated legal and ethical questions that we need to start figuring out now.
It's kind of like that classic sci-fi idea of robots turning against us, but really it's probably more about things we don't expect happening because it's a complex system that we don't fully understand. I mean, even with human workers, accidents happen. So how do we make things safer when we're dealing with machines that are intelligent?
We need to develop strong safety protocols and clear rules about who's accountable. We need to design robots with built-in safety features, fail-safe mechanisms, and frameworks for ethical decision-making. And honestly, we just need to have open conversations about the potential risks and benefits of this technology.
Can you give me an example of where those ethical considerations are really crucial, like where the stakes are especially high?
Let's think about healthcare. Imagine a humanoid robot assisting a surgeon during a complicated operation. What if the robot malfunctions right in the middle of surgery? That could be disastrous. We have to make sure that these robots are designed to be as safe and reliable as possible, and that there are clear plans in place for humans to supervise and step in if needed.
That is a scary thought. It feels like we're only just starting to figure all this out, and the technology is moving so fast. How can we keep up?
I think we need to approach this whole new era with a mix of curiosity and caution. We need to stay informed, have honest discussions about the good and the bad that could come from this technology, and actively shape how it's developed and used.
We can't just ignore it and hope it goes away, right?
Exactly. Humanoid robots are here to stay, and they're only going to become more common. We need to be involved in deciding what role they play in our society. And that leads to another important question. How will all this close interaction with robots affect us as humans?
Okay, now that is a really interesting question. We already see people getting attached to their pets, their cars, even their phones. Could we see the same thing happening with robots, especially as they start looking and acting more human?
It's possible. There's a whole field of research called human-robot interaction that looks into these very questions. Some studies show that people can feel empathy, even attachment, towards robots, especially those that are designed to show emotions and respond to us. Remember those robots we were talking about earlier, the ones that are companions for elderly people? Those robots are made to make people feel connected and cared for.
So are we looking at a future where robots aren't just our helpers or coworkers, but also our friends, our confidants, maybe even something more?
It's a future that's full of possibilities, both exciting and ethically challenging. What does it even mean to have a close relationship with a machine? What are the effects on our minds and our society? How do we make sure these relationships are healthy and good for us? These are questions we need to wrestle with as this technology keeps advancing.
Wow, there's a lot to think about. It feels like we're at the very beginning of a huge societal change, but even with all these questions, one thing's for sure. Humanoid robots aren't just science fiction anymore. They're real, and they're changing our world in ways we're only beginning to grasp.
And understanding is key. We need to be informed, talk about this stuff openly and honestly, and take an active role in shaping how this technology is developed and used. We need to ask ourselves, what kind of future do we want to build with humanoid robots? How do we want them to fit into our lives?
That's a great way to put it. It's not just about what robots can do, but about what we want them to do and how we prepare for that future. This has been a really insightful conversation. We've gone from the mechanics of how robots move to the ethics of human-robot relationships. And it's clear there's so much more to explore. I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on where all of this is headed and what it means for us individually.
Okay, we're back. And I got to say, I'm still thinking about everything we talked about with these humanoid robots. It's kind of wild to see how far they've come and all the possibilities they hold.
Yeah, it's exciting. But it's also a little bit overwhelming thinking about all the ethical stuff and how it could change society. So to wrap the things up, I want to focus on what all this means for us, you and me, in a practical way. Expert, where do you see this technology going in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years? What kind of changes might we see in our everyday lives?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot more humanoid robots in our everyday lives. And as they get cheaper to make and AI gets better, these robots will be more affordable and able to do more things. It's not just going to be about robots in factories or labs anymore. We'll probably start seeing them in healthcare more, taking care of the elderly, teaching, maybe even working in customer service.
So, like, the person making my coffee could be a robot someday.
It's definitely possible. But I think the important thing to remember is it's not about just replacing humans with robots. Humanoid robots are meant to work with us, to help us do more and free us up to focus on the things that humans are really good at.
So it's about collaboration, not replacement.
Exactly. Robots might be great at repetitive tasks, very precise work, or processing data, but humans bring creativity, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. It's all about finding that sweet spot where humans and robots can each use their strengths.
Right. But if we want this collaboration to work, we humans need to adapt too, right? What kind of skills do we need to succeed in this new world where robots are our partners?
Being adaptable is going to be key. We'll need to keep learning throughout our lives, be ready to pick up new skills, and be okay working alongside these smart machines. The jobs of the future might require us to know a little bit about programming, or how to fix a robot if something goes wrong, or how to teach a robot to do a new task. But even more than technical skills, we'll need to keep developing the things that make us human: our creativity, critical thinking, how we communicate, and how we work together.
It's kind of daunting, honestly, but also exciting. It feels like we're on the edge of a whole new era, kind of like the Industrial Revolution, but for robots.
I think that's a great comparison. And just like the Industrial Revolution, this new era of robotics is going to bring big changes. Changes to our society, our economy, even how we understand what it means to be human.
So as we finish up this deep dive into humanoid robots, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. If you could have your own robot helper, what would you want it to do? What jobs would you give it? What skills would you want it to have? And on a bigger scale, what are your hopes and worries about this future where robots are becoming more and more a part of our lives?
Those are questions we should all be asking ourselves. Because the future of humanoid robots isn't something that's just happening to us. It's something we're all making together. Through the choices we make, our values, and how willing we are to embrace this new technology.
I love that. That's not just about what robots can do. It's about what we want them to do and how we get ready for that future. It's been amazing exploring this topic with you. I hope everyone listening feels like they can keep the conversation going, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep imagining the possibilities. Because the future, literally, is in our hands.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed that content, I would be happy if you would leave a like and a subscription here. If you have questions or feedback, just leave it in the comments. Have fun, stay healthy, until next time.